why UK can't build anything. So yeah, let's find out. I had this video on my watch list for a while, watch later list, and I'm finally like watching it and reacting to it.
January
so yeah.
2013. The small town of Theale,
That was ages ago.
West Berkshire, has just announced plans for this, a new railway bridge.
If someone is from Theale, West Berkshire, or been there, is this thing still standing there? Because they could have modernized it in like ages.
While not particularly remarkable, it was still predicted to cost around £2 million.
Bruh, why? This thing looks not like a £2 million project, like 2 million quid. You could build a whole railway station with that amount of money. This is just a overpass, basically. Like, what do you mean 2 million? That should only cost like quarter of that at best, in my opinion.
A not insignificant amount of money.
Yeah, it's very much not insignificant. You could buy a like 2 houses in London for that,
However,
maybe one big one.
Over budget were quickly brushed aside, as this would be a quick routine project that wouldn't take more than a couple years at most to complete. That, however, quickly changed.
So you're saying they said, oh, we're going to build it in 3 years, and then they decided, actually, it's going to take us a decade.
The project got caught in a web of delays, disputes over environmental impacts, accessibility standards, and planning.
Gotta love that, gotta love that. Looks like, yes, you cannot build here. This tree is antique. It has been here since medieval era. It has been during King Edward II. It was planted here by nobles. You cannot remove it. It's historical.
Work finally started in 2023.
It took them a freaking decade to start doing the thing. 2 million quid on the line. 10 years later, finally started. I don't even want to. If I had like hand movements on my model, you'd be seeing me moving my hands all over the place, being depressed as F.
10 years after the original project had been announced, and by that point, the budget had more than tripled to over.
Wait, what? So the budget didn't even stay.
£10 million. And it wasn't until January 2025, 12 years on from its announcement, that it was
finally
completed. For the country which started the Industrial Revolution, this is a pretty dire record. It clearly doesn't have.
True. We're gonna we're gonna fix the pothole. We're gonna remove, like, we're gonna block the street for the next 2 years.
Have to be this hard to build things. Halfway across the world, China faced a nearly identical problem, but they managed to deal with it in just 43 hours.
I mean, that's China. They can build a hospital ASAP. Like we know what they did during COVID. They could just like, boom, hospital. And in the UK, they're probably still building the hospitals the Tory government said they're gonna build.
Of course, they run one of the strongest authoritarian governments in the world, which makes it a lot easier to get stuff done. But the thing is, even among democracies, Britain is something of an exception. In the last decade, the average infrastructure project in the UK took almost twice as long to approve as those in Germany or France. Something has gone clearly very wrong here, and on the surface, it looks like Britain's construction industry is simply broken. But when you peel back the layers, you see this is exactly what.
Okay, here's my wild guess. Is UK construction industry as broken as the American one because it's all about land value or something?
What's meant to happen? The supposedly broken system is working exactly as intended, just not for the people you might expect.
So it's working for the bureaucracy, banks, politicians, and it's not working for me, you, the builder, and the guy that wants to fill in the pothole, basically.
It's easy to laugh at stories like Theale's Bridge, but the truth is they're not exactly an exception. In the UK, just 0.2% of major projects are finished on time. That's true. 23% run over budget.
That's also true.
Clearly a much bigger problem.
I could imagine that, like, it took like half a year. Literally, like, a small segment of the road was being fixed for half a year.
One baked into the.
In countries like, in some European countries, that would take only 1 month. It was very tiny bit of road.
The very way modern Britain works. To really understand why the system is so broken, it's helpful to take a look at what actually goes into getting approval to build anything. Imagine you're trying to construct a new railway station. You've secured the land, lined up funding, and somehow convinced the locals it'll all be worth the
Wow. So this whole process took you probably a decade itself.
disruption. You open your laptop expecting to find a checklist, a simple step-by-step guide for how to actually start building, but instead you find a labyrinth of paperwork, more than 20,000 pages of plan.
Bureaucracy, you gotta love that. Bureaucracy, my favorite. And I'm not bad mouthing UK here, because you have countries like Germany, which has absurd amount of bureaucracy. You have countries like Poland, which has more so confusing amount of the bureaucracy than absurd. It's just like, oh, do I actually need this? No, you don't need this. Oh, actually, pardon me, sir. You actually do need it. Oh, you're just like, what the hell?
Planning guidance, environmental regulations, and heritage protection.
So much. And then remember, within the span of the years that you've been like figuring it out, they probably like added new legislation and stuff like that you actually have to like, you know, figure out yourself.
By different departments in slightly different legal dialects. There's the National Planning Policy Framework, Network Rails Design Standards, Building Regulations, Fire Safety Codes, Environmental Impact Assessments, and about a dozen separate accessibility requirements.
Wow.
Now, to be fair, this isn't exactly unique to the UK. Pretty much every developed country has rules for how to build safely and sustainably.
Exactly. Bureaucracy.
Most of which began as well-intentioned efforts to make sure things actually...
I mean, yeah, but when you like, okay, see, they were well-intentioned because it's like you prefer a safe house than something that's going to collapse within 5 years, right? But then you also need to remember that if you add too much to the list, at some point you're gonna have houses that shouldn't exist existing, and and if you try to modernize those houses, then you're gonna have a bunch of issues as well.
Actually worked. Bridges didn't collapse, stations didn't flood, and buildings didn't burn down. You know, the basics.
The basics.
But over time, those rules multiplied. Every time there was some safety, you know, the basics. But over time...
Can someone explain to me what the hell is going on with this road here? What is this? This is confusing. I would be scared to drive here. I don't even drive, but I would be scared to drive here.
Those rules multiplied. Every time there was some safety incident, the solution was always to pile on another layer of regulation. Things have gotten so bad.
You know how you have flex tape. That's how you know, administrators do stuff in governments. The politicians be like, something bad happened. Let's just like, you know, let's slap a bit of legislation on that. You know, just a little bit. Yeah, that's gonna fix it. And then you have like another thing just like breaking down somewhere else.
A single infrastructure project will more often than not take longer than the actual construction itself. The application for Heathrow's third runway famously generated over 25,000 pages of documentation.
What?
To put that into perspective, if you were to stack all those pages on top of each other, the pile would stand taller than the runway is long.
That's a waste of money.
These mountains of paper
that's a lot of paper
done have ended up creating entire industries of consultants, lawyers, and advisors whose full-time job is helping people navigate these insane...
When you're the builder and you see a guy in a suit coming in telling your boss, no, you cannot do that, no, and then you just like shake your head being like, what the hell am I meant to do then? And then you just like give up, basically.
Bureaucracies. And of course, the harder the system is to understand, the more valuable their expertise becomes. The environmental and sustainability consulting market alone is estimated to be worth over £6 billion, which is nearly the same as the UK's entire music industry.
Wow.
It's created a kind of self-sustaining ecosystem, one that feeds on its own complexity without ever actually producing anything of value. Now, that might all sound pretty ridiculous. After all, it certainly isn't in the country's interests as a whole to make building anything difficult. But that's where things start to get a little more complicated, because while it might be bad for taxpayers...
Britain's favourite design. Red brick, two floors, connected. I forgot what was like the I don't know, is this like flats, connected flats? I know that there's probably a semi detached somewhat. I think these houses are like triplets, I think. I don't know. I don't know what's the proper terminology
anyone
for
who
that.
actually wants
Oh, this one is standing out, and this one here.
new housing or infrastructure, it's been great for the people who already own it.
Yeah.
Deportation!
Okay.
This phenomenon is so well documented that it's actually got its own name. NIMBYs. Short
Yeah, NIMBYs.
but not in my backyard. Most of them tend to be middle class or affluent, which
True.
is why they're often described as the construction industry's version of a Karen. They come
They are.
in all forms. Environmentalists worried about green space,
You gotta hate them. They exist.
animal rights advocates
They do exist. I haven't seen them. Like, ever.
protecting local habitats, heritage groups defending historic buildings,
Okay.
or simply homeowners who don't want their morning view
I don't wanna see the park being deconstructed into some modernist concrete thing. It's gonna decrease my land value and it's going to make me very unhappy when I drink my morning coffee. I prefer to see trees. Leave them trees alone.
disrupted. On the surface, they're easy to mock. People who are opposed to change just for the sake of it. But the weird thing is, in most cases, they're not necessarily acting irrationally. Imagine you live in a small rural village in the southwest.
Yeah.
And a developer comes along asking to build a massive block of new flats on the edge of town. All those extra flats would almost certainly bring down the value of your home.
Yeah. And it's going to increase the number of people in the... Okay, see, here's the thing with supply and demand. If there's a moderately sized town nearby that will employ those people, because like there is no point constructing housing if there is no demand for housing, basically. So if there is no industry that requires a lot of people, like let's say, I don't know, if there is no logistics or no farming or no I don't know, factory work, basically jobs that require a lot of people working physically, there is no point in like constructing new housing and decreasing the value. If there's a town nearby that everyone is working for, then you have the concept of subtown basically, and then there is point in building these houses because everybody is going to just like the housing within the area is going to be cheaper. I mean, the people living there will be mad, but the housing will get cheaper basically, and what you're going to see is basically the place itself get a bit richer, basically because there's more people coming in with like, you know, money from the bigger city that's nearby. So it's kind of beneficial in a way sometimes, and sometimes it's just not really beneficial. Depends on the context. So yeah.
And add in the extra traffic, noise, and construction mess, and there's really little very upside for the homeowners at all.
I mean, that is true. Those are the negatives, but it depends on like the location, the needs and stuff like that. So yeah.
So local residents basically do whatever is in their power to stop development happening, creating some pretty ridiculous stories. A few years ago, a construction company wanted to convert an abandoned Victorian hospital into 291 apartments.
Okay, that sounds smart.
Luckily for the locals,
they're gonna be like, this is a historic piece of architecture, we cannot destroy it.
In the way was a 400-year-old mulberry tree. Any attempt to relocate the tree would risk killing it, at which point
That's a little bit of a fragile boy over there. Just like, you shall not touch the tree. This tree was antique. It was here planted by Queen Victoria herself. And it was watered by the local noble that had a mansion down the hill. Or maybe not down the hill, they usually go up the hill. Up the hill, yes.
The East London Garden Society argued that this wasn't just any tree. It was a specially protected veteran tree. This ended up causing a massive...
Does this tree have a veteran status? Does it, like, you know... Does it get paid?
delay as the dispute.
And I'm not laughing at veterans over here. I'm just laughing at giving a tree a veteran status.
Went on.
I mean, the tree did survive two wars, which is quite impressive, probably.
The local council to review, and a series of environmental assessments had to be carried out. after a lengthy legal process, they finally allowed the developer to relocate the tree. Now, this is where
Plot twist. The tree died.
things should have ended, but a couple weeks after this ruling, a local resident launched a legal challenge.
What? So they didn't even move the tree? Wow.
This ended up going all the way to a high court, who ended up overturning the council's decision, blocking any development from taking place. So,
No.
nearly 7 years later, nothing had been built, and this
Nothing ever happens, chat. Nothing ever happens. Yeah.
kind of thing isn't a one-off. In the last decade, 16 major infrastructure projects faced legal challenges, but only one of them actually got passed. The other 15 were blocked, in most cases because
That is so
local
stupid.
NIMBYs managed to get in the way. Part of the reason why this group has so much power compared to in other countries is because, well, there's just a lot more of them. Back in the 1980s, Margaret Thatcher introduced a series of home ownership policies, most famously the right to buy scheme. The idea was that if working class families could own their own homes, they'd be less reliant on the state, instead building personal wealth through their properties. And in one sense, it worked. Home ownership
It did work. Back then you could have a house. Nowadays you cannot have a house. Nowadays you have to, like, if you go to any city, you basically either somehow have enough money to rent out a place for yourself, or you have to rent out with other people. Annoying. Very annoying. I don't like renting out with other people.
soared to the second highest rate in the G7. The trouble is, that created a massive new group of people who were financially incentivized to block almost any new development. And the result has been some of the longest planning delays in the developed world. In fact, between 2010 and 2020, the average time to approve a major housing project doubled, rising to around 5.
Okay, see. So in the UK, okay, so here's the contrast. Okay, in the UK, you get through all of the paperwork, you get the land, you get everything, and then you get cock-blocked by the people living nearby. In the United States, you don't get to even start considering building anything because you get cock-blocked by the NIMBYs over there saying, oh, no, we don't want this thing here. It's going to decrease our land value. So in the UK, at least you get to start the process. In USA, you don't even get to do that.
5 years on average, more than double Germany and 5 times that of France.
Wow.
Now, as tempting as it is to blame a certain prime minister from the 1980s, the reality is a bit more complicated. Yes, the UK has one of the highest home ownership rates in the Western world, but it's not entirely unique in that respect. Singapore, for instance, has managed to get more than 90% of its residents onto the property ladder.
Very impressive. I love Singapore. It's such a pretty place. It's amazing. I would love to live there. But it's hella expensive and has hella amount of laws. Like, big laws.
And unlike Britain, it managed to build entire new cities in less time it takes the UK to approve a single train station.
Okay, but they have limited access to land, so they have to build higher. Like, one of the biggest issues I have with the UK, and that is like, you have medium-sized towns, like medium, right? Medium-sized towns, right? Not tiny, just like medium, right? They do not construct like tall apartment buildings. They don't. Like, if I ever see tall apartment buildings, they're usually like either in like big cities or massive cities or London, basically. Like, anything from medium-sized town to like a regular-sized city, you don't see like big tall apartment buildings. And then you go over to like, let's say Germany or Poland, and you see all of those apartment buildings being constructed, basically big old tall apartment buildings. That's how you like have a lot of people in, like, you know, in in small amount of area, basically. And I'm not saying they look good. They can look good. I just think I put this is like my preference over here. I prefer tall apartment buildings over like whatever this is. This is like a lot of space being used, not so much wisely, and it could be used more wisely, in my opinion. But yeah, everything just looks like a brick over there.
So while widespread home ownership certainly hasn't helped, the deeper issue lies somewhere else, in a much more subtle but far more important feature of how the system was designed. This becomes pretty obvious.
I love this. This is like some sort of dystopia. You, the citizen, get to live over here. The rich people get to live over there.
when we take a closer look at the actual legal framework the UK uses to make these kind of planning decisions. The country's planning system is centred around a piece of legislation passed in 1947 called the Town and Country Planning Act.
This thing is like nearly 100 years old.
At the time, the country, particularly London, was busy rebuilding the nation after the Second World War.
Yeah.
Because land was so cheap, it was a lot more profitable for developers to spread their buildings outwards rather than keeping them concentrated in city centres. The problem was that kind of urban sprawl risked putting massive pressure on already strained transport systems. These were the rail, roads and utilities that were still being patched back together after the war. So they passed this piece of legislation with the goal of effectively restricting how far cities could expand. Now, that might sound like it makes a lot of sense, and to be fair, for the time it did. The only problem is that nearly 80 years later, the same...
So that's why you have City of London, and then you have like those different areas around London that are like the London metropolitan area, basically. I see. I'm already here just like, oh yeah, that's how they went around that, you know?
Piece of legislation still dictates how most planning decisions in the UK are made. To put that into perspective...
Why? Sometimes I wonder, why don't we put expiration dates on documentation? Like, let's say you have a documentation that is like, let's say from, I don't know, like 1918, let's say, straight after World War One. You have piece of legislation from back then, and it's still like in effect nowadays. And maybe it's like some completely pointless thing like, you cannot sell a horse to the French or something like that. I don't know why would that exist, but yeah, let's say that, yeah. And just like, why would it still need to exist nowadays? Like there's probably a lot of like pieces of paper that used to exist and have like proper purpose, and they no longer do. Like, why?
Since the law was introduced, the UK's population has increased by almost 20 million people, from around 50 million in 1947 to nearly 70 million today. And every single year, it's still growing by roughly 300,000 to 400,000 people, more than an entire decade's worth of population growth back in the 1940s. Since then, the government has made some pretty significant attempts to change the rules around planning. In 2012, it created a new body called the Planning Inspectorate, designed to fast-track the biggest and most important projects. The idea was simple enough.
Wait a minute.
Designed to fast...
I thought, oh my days, for a moment I thought this thing was floating. Like, you see the red thing on top of like the rod. I thought it was floating in the air.
Fast-track the biggest and most important projects. The idea was simple enough. If local councils were the bottleneck, just move the decision-making up a level. Now,
that is pointless. Because... I mean, okay, it's smart when it comes to like when you go to like a court case, but it's pointless because like you have to go from, see, okay, if I don't know if this guy is going to explain it, but in my, like the way I'm thinking right now is like, it's going to go to a council, then the council is going to send it to the inspection, planning inspection people, and then the planning inspection people give you through the decision at you. So it has to go through 2 security checks basically before you get a decision, and then someone is going to pop up and say, I disagree, and then you go to the court, and then the inspection people are gonna say, no, we agreed on that, it's fine, and then then you win the court case and you can proceed.
If you think that sounds a little weird to try and cut down on bureaucracy by effectively creating another layer, then you'd be right. The new
there we go.
body's first big test came with HS2, a flagship infrastructure project meant to connect London and Birmingham with a high-speed rail line, eventually extending further north to Manchester and Leeds. But it didn't take long for things to start to go wrong. Almost from day one, the project ran into a wall of objections. Entire communities went out to protest the route, forcing the government to run roughly a quarter of the route through tunnels, which are about 10 times expensive to
Oh my
build.
days.
Then came the environmental lobby.
Brother, why? Those people are so freaking annoying. Like, okay, this is my personal opinion. I live nearby a train station. Literally, like, 20-minute walk, I'm in a smaller train station, right? I hear trains, like, loud trains, maybe once a day. And that's, like, literally, like, before me going to sleep. That's a non-issue. if you have like housing literally next to, I've seen housing literally built next to a railroad. Like, if you live next to a railroad, yeah, I see the issue. I see the issue, but if the government is constructing something like this, then they shouldn't be probably going through, you know, like, let's say, High Street. They will not be going through High Street probably. They will try their best to like go through an area that's like least inhabited probably, and then like get to the train station, go through to the next train station, you know, something like that. Like smart planning. You have to have a bit more faith in the government sometimes. I mean, it's the UK government you're talking about, but it's like you sometimes have to have like faith in, you know, what the government decide and what the construction people decide. I mean, even the construction people don't want to like destroy things. They just want to build thing, not destroy. Sometimes you have to destroy, but it's, you know,
complaining about the disruption of local ecosystems. So the government had to build an 100 million
big long tunnel
to protect a colony.
Just to protect the trees. Just to protect the bloody trees.
Of just 300 bats. When HS2...
Not even trees, bats. Why?
...was first given the green light back in 2012, it was projected to cost around 32.7 billion.
And now you plop a 0 next to the 2.
...billion pounds. Today, that number has gone up by more than 3 times, with completion...
Oh, no, it's 100 billion.
...not expected
not
until
bad.
2030 at the earliest. Not exactly...
2030.
...a roaring success for a body that was supposed to streamline the planning process. But
I wanted to say I'm going to go on the train and see how it feels, but then I like, if it says 2036, I'm probably you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to be alive back then. After that.
the thing is, it's not exactly surprising either. Trying to fix a broken system of regulators by adding another regulator is a bit like trying to put out a fire by smothering it in oil. Actually taking steps towards fixing the country's broken planning system will require a lot more than any one piece of legislation.
True.
At the heart of the failure is really a much bigger question about what the government should actually be doing. Over the past few decades,
don't add new legislation. Remove old legislation. Literally. See, this is like one of the things I don't like Donald Trump myself, you know. Not really a fan. I'm European. He doesn't do much for me, you know. But one of the things I like about the current the Donald Trump is that he's like trying to remove certain pieces of legislation that are not necessarily needed. And well, sometimes some of them are needed sometimes, but some of them are not really needed. I feel like more governments should, like, you know, consider removing pieces of legislation instead of adding more to it, like piling on, because it's going to make things more effective. It's going to you have to deregulate. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. You have to deregulate things, because the way things are now, it's like you have to ask 5 people before you can even start a project. Then you start the project, and then you get like 20 more people saying, I don't like what you're doing. And then you're like, bloody hell. And then you have to ask 5 more people to fix the situation, and then you potentially start fixing it, and then the budget skyrockets, you know.
Role has expanded into almost most areas of national life. Housing, the environment, regional inequality, even urban design. Each one of those things on its own sounds reasonable, and in many ways they are. But the problems start when the government tries to do all of them at the same time. Every major project becomes a political balancing act, part infrastructure project, part social program, and part environmental plan. And in trying to satisfy everyone, it ends up satisfying no one. Ultimately, Britain's failure to build isn't just about inefficiency or poor management. It reflects a deeper institutional problem, one that's evolved over decades of layering competing goals and interests onto every aspect of governance. The original planning framework wasn't designed to handle the economic demands of the 21st century. Yet instead of properly reforming it, successive governments have simply added more complexity in the hope of reconciling.
See those cranes over here? They're in the middle of the city. Oh, Gherkin is over here. The Gherkin. But yeah, you see those like cranes over here? They're actually building something in the middle of the city, and no one is no one is angry. Wow, surprise.
Everything at once. Each new rule consultation and oversight body was meant to protect something valuable.
Yeah.
But together, they've created a system that often prevents anything from being built at all.
Exactly, it's just wasting time and taking ages to do anything.
What began as a
Give John the Builder opportunity to do his job without worry. You know,
sensible framework for
let the crane man Mark do his crane stuff, you know.
oversight has gradually evolved into a system designed to remove all risk from public life, and in the process to protect the interests of those who already benefit from the status quo. Actually reversing this trend would require a government willing to question those assumptions.
That's a huge demand from you, mate. Government questioning assumptions, government questioning the past. Wow.
Accept that progress always involves some degree of risk, but that protecting everyone from change ultimately means protecting the country from changing at all. Britain's problem, in other words, from change ultimately means
what the man is breaking. What the hell is going on?
Protecting the country from changing at all. Britain's
Is he
problem,
just breaking
in
a
other
car?
words, isn't that it forgot how to build. It's that it built a system where doing so successfully became the exception rather than the rule.
True. So freaking true. Oh, the end of the video. I see. Honestly, this video was freaking amazing. I quite agree with many things this person stated. Like, this channel, I mean, the video has a bunch of views. It should have much more subscribers. Much more. He's making like pretty decent videos. Like, I've seen one of his other videos about the bakery split. You know, Pretz on the bottom, Greg's on the top. You know, Pretz for the rich people, Greg's for the average people, basically. And yeah. But yeah, there are many points that I do agree with. There is a bunch of pointless legislation. I'm surprised that UK has so many issues. Like, I know that UK had quite a bit of issues with, like, you know, legislation and actually proceeding with stuff and doing stuff, because I've seen that happen. However, I also believe that there should be less legislation, maybe like review of whatever they wrote freaking 100 years ago. Right, a good old review of every piece of legislation they wrote about, like, construction 100 years ago would be pretty good. Honestly, I feel like much more. Some countries like need less legislation and allow for the construction sector to do more themselves, and some countries need more legislation for, like, to limit the construction sector, because frankly speaking, in some countries, the construction sector is ripping people off, basically. So yes. But yeah, this was a very good video. Link to a video is in the description. And if you like my opinions, my video, then yeah, you can leave a like, subscribe, comment down below what you might want to see me react to next, maybe.